Chapter 31 Uncle Ma is here, who dares to be arrogant? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The elegant room of the wine shop. A bunch of people who can't stand up to the table. Yi Yun put down his chopsticks with a disdainful smile on his face. This ninth-rate Shenlong Sect, the dual cultivation technique practiced, is the worst technique of harvesting yang and replenishing yin. That saintess of the Shenlong Sect had a lustful reaction when she saw Lord Grimm, all because of her ancestral dragon bloodline. The ancestral dragon bloodline is extremely strong and yang, which is difficult for the female monks of the Shenlong Sect to resist. Yi Yun tapped the table gently, silently calculating the progress of Luo Li and Lord Grimm's cultivation. If we were to withstand the attacks from the two forces, the Blood-Clothes Sect and the Shenlong Sect, they can also break through a second time. After all, the god-level dragon and tiger pill that the two of them took for the first time was astonishingly effective. Coupled with the body transformed by the blood of the ancestral dragon, it was far superior to similar monks. This leaves the potential of the two of them far from being realized. This is a tough battle today, it just allows them to break through under tremendous pressure. Yi Yun will wait and see. The battle is still going on fiercely. The old mama narrowed her eyelids slightly and realized that although the two young men were stretched thin in the face of a strong attack, they relied on their wonderful body skills to continuously create phantoms of the dragon one after another. In the air, he can dodge various attacks freely. She frowned. These two teenagers looked very familiar to each other. Where did they come from? Look at their young age. One is 16 or 17 years old, and the other is only 15 or 16 years old. It is really commendable to have such cultivation at such a young age. The saint of the Shenlong Sect has been vigorously cultivated by the sect's resources since she was a child. She has only reached the 9th level of Yuan High Realm at the age of 20. The two boys and girls in front of them are no less qualified than their own saints. The old grandma has a very vicious look, which can be seen at a glance. Even her own saint would never be able to withstand the siege of so many Yuan High Realm monks alone. After the time of one stick of incense, Zhou Menjing, whose body kept having strange symptoms, finally couldn't bear it anymore. Mom, please capture that boy and end this battle as soon as possible. Feeling hungry and thirsty in her heart, Zhou Menjing ordered anxiously. Okay, miss. The old grandma nodded respectfully. A look of pride flashed across her face. She was a great cultivator in the God-shaping realm, and she could capture a 5th-level monk in the Yuan High realm as easily as an eagle catches a chicken. She just took a step. Boom. Suddenly, there was a huge rumbling sound in my mind. The sound shook her unsteadily, and she passed out in an instant. Mommy, what's wrong with you? Zhou Menjing was startled and quickly supported the fallen grandma. The old grandma closed her eyes tightly and fell into a coma. What happened? Bai Yufeng came closer and looked at the great monk on the 2nd level of the God-shaping realm with a shocked expression. Suddenly fell into coma. It turned out to be exactly the same as Elder Lu before. Could it be said that there is an expert nearby who secretly took action to harm this strong man of the God-shaping realm of the Shenlong Sect? Bai Yufeng looked around vigilantly, but did not find any clues. To be able to make a great monk in the God-shaping realm unconscious and unconscious, I am afraid that only a monk in the Shenqiao realm can do this, right? But where are the powerful people in the Shenqiao realm and the Guyu dynasty? Even the half-step Shenqiao realm experts are only the old sword masters of the Sword God sect. A corner of the square, the inconspicuous black horse shook his head and sneezed slightly, with a strong sense of ridicule in his eyes. Does a small person in the God-shaping realm actually want to become the master's successor? Don't even look at it, Uncle Ma is guarding it right here. Whoever dares to touch the two little masters is not giving him the face of an old horse. Snort. Uncle Ma is here, who dares to be arrogant? Seeing that this little dark horse prevented the God-shaping monk from taking action twice in a row, Yi Yun smiled slightly. Suddenly an emerald green fruit appeared in his hand. With a flick of the finger, the emerald green fruit filled with Taoist charm disappeared into the void. The next moment, a familiar voice came from the black horse's ears. Well done. Thank you, old man. The next words have not been spoken yet. It suddenly discovered that there was an extra fruit in its mouth. This fruit contained Taoist charm and exuded an unimaginable fatal temptation. As if afraid of leaking the breath, it swallowed it without hesitation. After eating this green fruit, the light in its eyes suddenly shone brightly. Seems to be a huge benefit. the black horse trampled lightly on the ground with its hooves, unable to conceal the ecstasy in its heart. The master gave it a god-level Taoist fruit, which raised it to a higher level. This feeling, simply wonderful. After Zhou Menjing settled the old woman, she drew out her sword and walked towards the center of the square. Although she didn't know why the old woman was unconscious, this battle could not continue and she had to fight it quickly, caught the young man and left here quickly. Junior brother, the saint girl of Shenlong Sect is coming towards you, you must be more careful. Luo Li reminded quietly from the side. Sister, don't worry. I can withstand it. Jun Maxiao looked at Zhou Menjing approaching and sneered. Now, he wishes that the pressure of fighting would be as strong as possible. The stronger the pressure, the faster the power of the dragon tiger pill operates. Maybe, he can also break through to a small realm. With the addition of Zhou Menjing, a 9th-level Yuan High realm expert, the battle suddenly became more exciting. As a saint of the Shenlong Sect, Zhou Menjing's combat prowess is also extremely amazing. She has only one goal now, and that is to capture Lord Grimm. For a moment, Lord Grimm was dodged by all kinds of powerful sword attacks, and was in danger. He was even hit by several swords. Due to the decline in the quality of the imperial robes, Zhou Menjing's sharp sword energy pierced through the robe and actually made him covered in color. Lord Grimm looked determined, without flinching, and still fought bravely with Zhou Menjing. He felt that the breakthrough was getting closer and closer, especially after being hit with a few swords. The pressure reached its peak, and the desire for breakthrough became stronger. As Zhou Menjing placed the core of her attack on Lord Grimm, more Yuan High realm monks attacked Luo Li at the same time. Luo Li also encountered a huge crisis. She also began to be injured and bleeding. However, relying on their strong bodies, both of them were holding on. Little brother, why are you holding on so hard? Surrender quickly and come back to Huanzhong with me. I will marry you to be the husband of my saint. Zhou Menjing waved her long sword. The sword light was sharp and strange, and she let out seductive laughter. There was a natural charm in her voice that made people's hearts sway. However, Lord Grimm was not disturbed. The heart of his sword is bright and strong, and coupled with the bloodline of the ancestral dragon, he is full of natural defense against this evil and crooked technique. The battle passed in just one stick of incense. With 2 bang-bang sounds, after a hard battle, Lord Grimm and Luo Li both broke through at this moment. Lord Grimm broke through to the 6th level of Yuan High realm. Luo Li broke through to the 3rd level of Yuan High realm. The aura of the two people suddenly surged at this moment. The sword light was sharp, the momentum was like a rainbow, and they counterattacked like a tide. Chapter 32. The bloody battle has just come to an end, and a powerful enemy appears again. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Even though it was just a small breakthrough, but for the two of them, their combat effectiveness soared. This caught Zhou Menjing and others off guard. How can it be? Why did they break through again? Bai Yufeng struck the ground with his sword, with an angry look on his face. During the battle, these two guys actually broke through twice in a row. Is this still justified? The Guyu dynasty has never seen such a monstrous genius. If they were allowed to grow up, all the 10 major forces of the Guyu dynasty would surrender. What, a second breakthrough? Zhou Menjing was shocked. After hearing Bai Yufeng's words, she could not hide the turmoil in her heart. Have you had a breakthrough before? This is actually the second time. A fierce battle can break through 2 levels in a row, which is simply appalling. Hundreds of years ago, the invincible old sword master of the Sword God sect has never said that he broke through twice in a row. The more she thought about it, the hotter she became. If this young man is used as a furnace, it will have a huge improvement effect on her cultivation. Think of this. Zhou Menjing launched a crazy attack on Lord Grimm. At the same time, she also issued an order for all Shenlong Sect disciples to join the battle. The battle becomes more intense. Streams of sword energy shuttled through the air. The sword light was like a tsunami. The ground in the square where the bloody clothes gate was divided was dismembered to pieces. The surrounding walls suddenly collapsed. Although Zhou Menjing led the Shenlong Sect disciples to attack with all their strength, however, after their realms improved, Luo Li and Lord Grimm also withstood this wave of attacks. The more they fought, the more energetic they became, energized and not tired at all. Zhou Menjing and others were secretly shocked. Why are these two guys so physically powerful? The physical strength and mana have not been exhausted yet. Hey! The old grandma suddenly woke up in the midst of the acacia, a red necklace around her neck and shoulders kept emitting faint light, waking her up. Someone dares to sneak attack on me. That the old woman stood up suddenly, her body trembling slightly, and she actually exuded a powerful aura from the 9th level of the God-shaping realm. As the protector of the saint, she is extremely powerful, only, she has been using secret methods to suppress her realm to the 2nd level of the God-shaping realm. In an instant, her robes were flying in the air. Her expression was majestic, and her whole body exuded a power that was invincible in the world. In the private room of the wine shop, Yi Yun smiled softly. Hey, the fox's tail is finally exposed. That this old woman from the Shenlong Sect has been hiding very well, but she has never been able to escape the eyes of the true god Yi Yun. Yi Yun gently knocked on the table with his hand. The black horse stamped his foot lightly, again and again. A slight sound sounded inadvertently in the corner. It fell in the ears of the old woman, like a world-destroying divine thunder exploding, boom. Her soul was shaken, her eyes rolled white, and she passed out again in an instant. Bai Yufeng next to him was so frightened that his eyes were splitting when he saw this. He finally knew that there was a supreme being hidden nearby. He took several shots in a row and knocked out 2 strong men in the God-shaping realm. Thinking of this, he called a few junior brothers and quietly turned around, preparing to escape through the back door, again and again. The black horse's hoofs stepped lightly again. Bai Yutong and others all fell to the ground and died. On the square, the battle is fierce. After a hard fight, Lord Grimm and Luo Li had gained a slight upper hand. A number of Xiandan realm disciples began to get injured and withdraw from the battle. Gradually, Yuan Hai realm disciples were injured and lost the ability to fight again. The more Zhou Menjing fought, the more frightened she became, and there were fewer and fewer people around her. Without paying attention, a sharp sword energy struck over and landed directly on him. Fortunately, she had a heaven-level robe that blocked the fierce attack. Despite this, she was still blown away by the powerful force, with blood soaking from the corner of her mouth. After Zhou Menjing was knocked out, the pressure on other Yuan Hai realm disciples suddenly increased. Lord Grimm seized this opportunity and launched another wave of crazy attacks. He also knocked away more than a dozen Yuan Hai realm disciples. The situation of the battle suddenly turned around. Sister, let me help you. Lord Grimm immediately rushed in the direction of Luo Li, and the pair of brothers and sisters took action at the same time, killing each other until they were defeated. Another incense job passed. There were very few people standing in the entire square. Only Zhou Menjing and a few Yuan Hai realm disciples were left. At this moment, several people were covered in injuries and fighting bloody battles, and they could no longer hold on. Zhou Menjing had a sad smile on her face. She never expected that in the end, they would fail. At first glance, the situation was over. After exiting the battle circle, she held her sword across her chest. I am a saint from the Shenlong Sect. You can't kill me. Zhou Menjing said with a trembling voice. Luo Li slowly walked over holding the bloody Taishan golden dragon sword with a sneer on her beautiful face. Why, you are only allowed to kill us, but I am not allowed to kill you. As she said that, she stabbed him with her sword. Lord Grimm took the opportunity to kill all the other Yuan Hai realm monks. Zhou Menjing blocked Luo Li's blow, but she didn't expect that a sword light from Lord Grimm would also hit her. She quickly pulled back. The 3 men fought together. Zhou Menjing only lasted a few breaths before she was defeated and struck by more than a dozen swords. He fell into a pool of blood. Junior brother, we won. Looking at the entire square, there were no more enemies. Luo Li held the sword in her hand, her delicate body trembling with excitement. Yes, senior sister. Lord Grimm said excitedly. He went on a killing spree today, his sword sharpened even more sharply. Don't forget, our ancestors ordered us to put away all weapons and storage rings. Luo Li looked around, smiled softly, and got busy. Lord Grimm agreed and also began to collect resources. You guys are going too far. Zhou Menjing forced herself to hold herself up, sitting on the ground with difficulty, looking at the 2 guys harvesting the storage rings like demons, and said without tears. The old woman next to her woke up again leisurely. She stood up suddenly, looked around, her face changed drastically. The disciples of the blood-clothed sect and the Shenlong Sect were all wiped out. She took a quick step and came to Zhou Menjing's side. Miss, are you okay? I'm almost dead, Nanny. kill them quickly. Zhou Menjing's face turned pale and she said with a sad smile. Okay, miss, I will definitely avenge you. That the old grandma turned around with murderous intent, and her whole body released the powerful aura of the 9th level of the God-shaping realm. 9th level of the God-shaping realm. Luo Li and Jun Maxiao turned around. They were nervous and looked at the old woman as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Bang! A soft sound suddenly emitted from the bodies of the two of them. It was as if something that had been imprisoning their bodies had been broken. At this moment, the momentum suddenly surged. From the Yuan High realm, he broke through to the God-shaping realm in one fell swoop. Chapter 33 The Strong Man in Shenqiao Realm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ancestor, you have lifted the seal for us. Luo Li looked shocked at first, then suddenly realized the next second. She held the sword in both hands and bowed in a certain direction, expressing the supreme respect in her heart. The long-lost aura of the God-shaping realm spread throughout every part of the body again, filling Luo Li's heart with strong confidence. She is now a great monk at the 3rd level of the God-shaping realm. And junior brother Jun Maxiao has also become a great monk at the 6th level of the God-shaping realm. Once in the Izumo Sword Sect, the two of them, brother and sister, worked together to kill the supreme elder of the Izumo Sword Sect, who was at the 9th level of the God-shaping realm, and fled everywhere. Now it has been upgraded to 2 levels, combat power sword. They were fearless in the face of this Shenlong Sect elder at the 9th level of the God-shaping realm. It can be said that at this moment, the two of them completely crushed each other. The old mama looked at the aura of the two people suddenly turning into the spirit-shaping realm, and her eyes widened suddenly. The skinny old face was so shocked that even the wrinkles stretched out. How can this be? That the old grandma waved her sword and let out an earth-shattering roar. She hid her cultivation and lowered her realm from the 9th level to the 2nd level of the God-shaping realm, but the pair of young men in front of them were even more ruthless, directly lowering them to a great level. This is simply appalling. Junior brother, this old woman from the Shenlong Sect is not a good person. She has harmed many people. Let's kill her. Luo Li held the bloody sword and walked towards the old woman. Kill! Lord Grimm also raised his sword, with a cold expression on his face, and slowly approached. You two little bastards have killed so many disciples of my Shenlong Sect. Today I will chop off your heads to avenge the dead disciples. The old grandma's face was gloomy, and she held the sword and killed the two people, but as soon as they met, she realized that she was wrong. Originally, she thought she could rely on her cultivation at the 9th level of the God-shaping realm to overwhelm the two young men and kill them easily. After all, of these two young men, one is at the 6th level of the God-shaping realm, and the other is at the 3rd level of the God-shaping realm. It's not at the same level as her, but she didn't expect that her sword light would be broken as soon as they fought. The combined swords of this pair of young men and women produced unimaginable power. A few rounds down, she was surrounded by dangers and had a hard time resisting them. How so? That the old nanny secretly complained, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. While receiving the attacks of the two people, she kept retreating. Now we must find a way out. As Zhou Menjing's protector, she must take this saint away. Luo Li instantly saw what the old woman was thinking. She quickly rushed over and blocked the way. Want to run? Lord Grimm glanced at it and understood immediately. He also started to attack the old woman crazily. The old nanny found that her escape route was blocked and couldn't help but glared at Luo Li fiercely. This little girl was so clever that she saw through her tricks. She had no choice but to bite the bullet and fight hard. The three masters of the God-shaping realm were constantly fighting in the blood-clothed sect. Many buildings were affected and damaged. After more than a dozen moves, the old woman was hit by a sword. Lord Grimm's sword directly cut her right arm, causing her sword-wielding hand to become a little weak. Laugh. A stern sword light stabbed her calf again. This time it was Luo Lixia's hand. The old woman was hit by two swords, and her wounds were all bloody. She became even more panicked. TSK. Jun Maxiao and Luo Li stepped up their attacks from left to right. After a burst of sword light, the old woman suffered 7 or 8 sword wounds and fell to the ground. Luo Li rushed over and killed the old woman with a single sword stroke. Lord Grimm walked over tacitly and put away the sword in storage ring. Junior brother, we finally killed all the enemies. Luo Li took a breath, and a bright smile bloomed on her beautiful little face covered with sweat. Sister, there are still some people in the square who are seriously injured but not dead, Lord Grimm said. Go over and mend your sword. Luoli gritted her teeth and said, today's battle has reached the point of life and death, they cannot be soft-hearted at this time. The two people walked to the square and began to send the seriously injured disciples home. When he arrived at Zhou Menjing's side, the seriously injured saint of the Shenlong Sect looked at Luoli with a miserable look on her face and begged, Sister, I will give you everything I have. If it is not enough, I will give you can ask this sect to provide you with what you need. Luoli laughed, the cherry-like red lips opened, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth. I want everything in the Shenlong Sect's treasure house. Can a saint like you be the master? Luoli suddenly laughed. Zhou Menjing was immediately speechless. Aha! A sword light flashed. Lord Grimm next to him stretched out his hand and struck out with a sword, sending Zhou Menjing into hell. Junior brother, you are more ruthless than me. You can kill such a sexy beauty from the Shenlong Sect. Luoli laughed and stuck out her pink tongue. She also didn't expect that her junior brother Jun Maxiao would be so decisive and happy. Lord Grimm wiped the blood from the sword, gritted his teeth and said, this stinky woman actually wants to capture me and use her as a furnace. Can I spare her? It really can't be spared. Luoli chuckled. A hearty voice suddenly floated down from the sky. Unexpectedly, the little Guyu dynasty actually has 2 such good cultivation seedlings. Who? Luoli and Jun Maxiao were startled at the same time, subconsciously looking towards the sky. I saw a vague white shadow above the clouds. Soon, the white shadow broke through the clouds and fell directly. It turned out to be a huge crane. Standing on top of the crane is a man in white robes. He is about 40 years old, looks like a fairy, and has the demeanor of a master. A strong man in the Shenqiao realm. Luoli couldn't help but shrink her pupils slightly when she saw the aura emanating from this person. This is definitely not a strong man from the Guyu dynasty. After feeling the opponent's cultivation level, Lord Grimm also felt as if he was facing a formidable enemy, with a nervous look on his face. Which sect do you 2 little kids study under? The middle-aged man stepped out of the crane, landed on the ground, put his hands behind his back, and looked at the 2 people with a smile on his face. The more he looked at it, the happier he became. Just now, he passed Guyan City from a distance and found that these 2 teenagers were fighting together against a 9th-level monk of the God-shaping realm. The 2 of them, with cultivation levels lower than several realms, actually easily killed the old woman. It must be said that these 2 young men and women have amazing talents and can be called rare geniuses. Compared with the talented disciples of his own sect, he is slightly better. We are from the Shenlong Sect. Luoli clasped her hands into fists, raised her little face slightly, and showed a proud look on her lips. Shenlong Sect? The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. After a few seconds, he slowly shook his head and said calmly, it's just a little-known sect. I see that you 2 are very talented, so why not join me, Chichen Sword Sect? Chapter 34 Shenlong Sect Disciple, you can't afford it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Little known. Luoli and Jun Grimm looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. The Shenlong Sect of 100,000 years ago was the top eternal level sect in Sangnan continent, a giant-like existence. Ha! When the middle-aged man saw this pair of boys and girls, a strange smile suddenly appeared on his face. He was unhappy and said calmly, 2 little kids, to tell you the truth, I come from the Chichen Sword Sect, one of the 3 major forces of the Kamikaze dynasty, and we are a big sect. Big sect. After hearing what the other party said, Lord Grimm couldn't help but lowered his head and smiled. Senior, I'm sorry, we will not join any sect. Your kindness, we appreciate it. Luoli suppressed her laughter, clasped her hands into fists, and politely refused. Middle-aged man. His face turned slightly pale with anger. He didn't expect these 2 teenagers to be so stubborn. As the saying goes, poor mountains and bad waters bring out unruly people. Sure enough, however, these 2 teenagers are rare geniuses, and it would be a pity to miss them. You are still young and don't know much about the outside world. Why don't you follow me back to the Kamikaze dynasty to see what a real big sect is? The middle-aged man put his hands behind his back and said calmly, with an unquestionable sacred majesty on his face. Luoli frowned slightly. could it be that this powerful man in the Shenqiao realm still wants to buy and sell by force? She shook her head. Senior, everyone has their own ambitions, don't force yourself. A cold light flashed in the middle-aged man's eyes. These two little kids are so ignorant of praise, so shameless. You guys, just come with me, he said with a sneer. He suddenly stretched out his big hand and grabbed Luo Li and June Grim. Suddenly, the big hand paused in mid-air, as if it was stabbed by a nail. There was unimaginable pain, and he jerked his hand back. An indifferent and majestic voice echoed in all directions. I am a disciple of the Shenlong Sect, but your Qitian sword sect cannot bear this. Who? The middle-aged man was shocked and looked behind him quickly. At this time, he found a young man in white robe slowly walking in from the door. This young man in a white robe, with jade trees facing the wind, deep eyes, and flying black hair, is like an immortal walking out of a painting, but the strange thing is that with his current cultivation level, he can't see that the other party has any cultivation level. As if he is just an ordinary person. Ancestor. Seeing the sudden appearance of their ancestor, Luo Li and Jun Maxiao were happy, and they bowed and saluted. Yi Yun gently waved his hand and lifted the two people up. He walked between the three of them, looking at the middle-aged man in the Shenqiao realm in front of him. He smiled calmly. Is the Qitian sword sect planning to be removed from the Kamikaze dynasty? The middle-aged man was unsettled and backed away. He felt an indescribable horror in the other person's eyes. I met a master from this world. This person's cultivation level is far better than his, and he cannot sense the other person's cultivation level. Senior, I am joking, please don't take it seriously. The middle-aged man looked panicked and quickly saluted with indescribable respect. Misfortune comes from the mouth, and everything is too late. Yi Yun smiled and let out a wisp of fresh air. The middle-aged man opposite had a frightened look on his face and could not move. As soon as he encountered the clear air, he immediately turned into a line of blue smoke and disappeared. The huge white crane could not escape disaster either. After dealing with this man and beast, Yi Yun shook his head gently and said calmly, what the hell is the Qitian sword sect? It's just a big sect, but it dares to be so presumptuous in front of our Shenlong sect. Jun Mo looked at his ancestor with a smile. At this moment, he looked like a stone sculpture. This was the first time he saw his ancestor actually take action. A wisp of fresh air caused a strong man in the Shenqiao realm to vanish into ashes. This powerful man in the true God realm is really terrifying. No matter in Wangue Ridge or Izumo sword sect, Lord Grimm has never seen the spectacular scene where his ancestor killed thousands of people in one go. If he saw it, he would definitely be even more shocked. This time, you have made a breakthrough and upgraded to 2 levels in a row, which is not bad. Yi Yun looked at Luo Li and Jun Maxiao, glanced at them lightly, and said with a smile. Thank you, ancestor, for your help. Luo Li and Jun Maxiao knelt on the ground, grateful. If they hadn't brought their ancestor's black carriage over, they wouldn't have gone so smoothly at all. In one battle, 2 small realms were broken through in a row. Such an astonishing record has never appeared in the Guyu dynasty. Have all the resources been collected? Yi Yun asked calmly. It's all put away, ancestor, we can go. Luo Li smiled slightly, stood up and said. You guys go into the carriage first, I've prepared potions for you. After Yi Yun finished speaking, he waved his sleeves lightly. A breeze blew out of my sleeves. The corpses and buildings around him turned into smoke and disappeared at this moment. Lord Grimm couldn't help but swallow hard when he saw this scene. What magical powers did our ancestors display? How terrifying! The entire Shui sect was divided into rudders, and suddenly evaporated from the inside of Guyun city in a gust of breeze. There was nothing all around. The breeze didn't stop and was still sweeping around. At this moment, Lord Grimm looked slightly stunned when he saw everyone around him, as if something had happened to them. Then, the two of them suddenly appeared on a road in the suburbs. Luo Li and Lord Grimm looked shocked, overwhelmed by their ancestors' dazzling magical power. Leave no trace. Yi Yun smiled lightly and casually erased part of the memories of everyone in Guyun city. Seeing that the two of them were still in a daze, Yi Yun disappeared from sight with a flick of his finger. Next moment, Luo Li and Lord Grimm found themselves in a separate room. There is also a large wooden barrel filled with hot water in the room. The white air is lingering, exuding an indescribable fragrance. The two of them were immediately shocked. They actually felt the breath of the ancestral dragon's essence and blood in this potion. In today's battle, your bodies have also been severely damaged to a certain extent. Take a dip in the potion and get some sleep. Ancestor, is there some ancestral dragon essence and blood here? Luo Li asked tremblingly. You are still young in cultivation. You only used less than a drop of the ancestral dragon essence and blood, and divided it into 2 buckets. As for this potion, there are hundreds of kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. You absorb it well and strive to achieve another breakthrough. The small realm can also be considered as laying the foundation for absorbing the essence and blood of the ancestral dragon in the next step, Yi Yun said with a smile. Thank you, ancestor. Luo Li was so excited that her heart trembled. She knew that her ancestors must have put countless treasures of heaven and earth into this bucket of potion that she could not even imagine. She quickly took off her robe and got into the barrel. A huge amount of life energy suddenly poured into the body along the pores, making Luo Li moan softly in comfort. It's so comfortable. She felt that the lost mana was rapidly recovering, and the wounds on her body were also healing. Rapidly, on the other side, the same is true for Lord Grimm. Both of them knew that this was a great opportunity, so they quickly sat cross-legged and silently operated their skills to absorb the energy in the potion. A black carriage walks on the official road. At this moment, no one was driving. Yi Yun sat quietly in the carriage. There was no one on either side of him. The black carriage is also a magical treasure, a space of its own. It was divided into a dozen small spaces by Yi Yun, but they were all hidden by him. 3 days later, a powerful aura came from the 2 small spaces at the same time. Lord Grimm has broken through to the 7th level of the God-shaping realm. Luo Li broke through to the 4th level of the God-shaping realm. Both breakthroughs. Chapter 35 The Old Sword Master of Shenqiao Realm comes out of seclusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sword God Sect. In the main hall of the sect leader, the leader of the clan, Zhao Wuji, was standing by the window, staring at the sky outside, his face extremely gloomy. Since this month, the 10 major forces of the Guyu dynasty were all challenged by a pair of young men and women from the Yuan Hai realm. They challenge all Yuan Hai realm disciples in each sect. If you win, all resources from each sect's treasure house will be taken away. If you lose, then you have to offer the head with both hands. The first one to face the challenge was the 7th-ranked Bloody Clothes sect. There are a total of 200 Yuan Hai realm disciples in the entire Blood Clothes sect. I originally thought that the Yuan Hai realm disciples of the Blood Clothes sect could easily win due to their large numbers. Unexpectedly, this pair of young men and women had amazing fighting power. Although they were suppressed in the early stage, they both broke through in the later stage and turned defeat into victory. All the Yuan Hai realm disciples of the Blood Clothes sect who participated in the battle were all seriously injured in this battle. The owner of the Bloody Clothes sect was furious. More than a dozen powerful men in the God-shaping realm took action to kill the young man and woman. Unexpectedly, this young man and woman actually hid their cultivation. After unlocking his cultivation level, he turned out to be a great monk in the realm of God-shaping. So this battle, all the strong men in the God-shaping realm of the entire Blood Clothes sect perished. This shocked the entire Guyu dynasty. The second person to be challenged was the Luoxia Sword Sect. With the Shui sect's lessons learned, the Luoxia Sword Sect did not dare to send out the God-shaping realm experts, but sent all the Yuan Hai realm disciples to fight against the young man and woman. The result was also a huge failure. In the end, he had no choice but to hand over all the sect resources in the treasure house. This pair of young men and women actually abided by the rules and did not kill the Luoxia Sword Sect. Next, 5 Poison Sect, Wuji Divine Sword Sect, Vajra Fist Sect, Jinpeng Sect. These major sects all encounter the same challenges. The results are without exception. All Yuan Hai realm disciples from these major forces were defeated. This is to challenge the entire 10 major forces of the Guyu dynasty. Zhao Wuji talked to himself, feeling indescribably irritable. The top 3 major forces are Sword God Sect, Sanchi Sect and Jinpeng Sect. The Sword God Sect is the strongest. Even the Sanchi Sect and the Jinpeng Sect combined are no match for the Sword God Sect. However, Zhao Wuji still felt unsure. Their Sword God Sect has a large number of Yuan Hai realm Tianjiao disciples, more than 300 of them. If a 7-star sword formation is deployed, these 300 disciples can exert amazing fighting power. Wuji Suddenly an old voice sounded in the hall, a white figure suddenly arrived. Zhao Wuji looked up, and a look of surprise suddenly appeared on his face. "Master, you are out of seclusion." The old man in front of him was Zhao Wuji's mentor. He is also an old sword master from the previous generation of the Sword God Sect, and he, Zhao Wuji, is the new swordsman of this generation. The old and new sword masters have not met each other for hundreds of years, and now they are a little excited to see each other. "Out of seclusion," that the old man in white with a sword on his back and an immortal spirit said with a smile. The aura on his body at this moment actually exudes the cultivation of the divine bridge realm. Zhao Wuji was immediately overjoyed. Master spent 100 years in seclusion and broke through to become a strong man in the Shenqiao realm. This is really the blessing of the Sword God Sect. "Wuji, what's bothering you?" That the old sword master looked at his beloved disciple and asked with a smile on his face. As the largest force in the Guyu dynasty, the Sword God Sect was more powerful than the second and third largest sects combined. Logically speaking, sitting in the position of the leader of the Sword God Sect, he shouldn't be so worried, unless a big outside force intervenes. But the Sword God Sect also has a backer. They are backed by a large sect. Zhao Wuji picked up several secret reports on the table and handed them to the old sword master. After reading this, the old sword master's face suddenly darkened. With a slight twist of his fingers, these secret reports instantly turned into ashes. "This is unreasonable. You are simply deceiving me as no one in the Guyu dynasty." That the old sword master looked angry. "Master, what do you think we should do?" Zhao Wuji asked. "Our Sword God Sect is so talented, how can we be afraid of these two wild cultivators with unknown origins?" That the old sword master sneered. A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he said coldly, "Let the disciples of my Sword God Sect fight first. If we win, we will naturally cut them into pieces. If we lose, then I will take action and kill them with my own hands in my Sword God Sect, which can be regarded as avenging the blood of other major sections. Hate it." "Thank you, Master." Zhao Wuji was immediately overjoyed, and the pressure in his heart was swept away. Those two young men, even if they unlocked the seal, were still monks in the realm of shaping the gods. In any case, it cannot be compared with the master of Shenqiao realm. Hundreds of years ago, the master is already invincible among monks of the same level. There was even a time when he fought alone against 10 powerful men of the same level as the god-shaping realm. One move caused his defeat. This shows how powerful the first swordsman of the Guyu dynasty was back then. From then on, the master washed his hands and concentrated on breaking through the Shenqiao realm. 100 years later, he got his wish. Outside the mountain gate of the Sword God Sect, a black carriage slowly drove over. In front of the carriage, Luo Li and Lord Grimm were sitting. After a month of fighting, the two men's spirits have transformed into completely different from before. The two men were tall and straight, their eyes were bright, and they seemed to have countless groups of sharp sword intent. Every move exudes a powerful aura. "Luo Li, the mountain gate of the Sword God Sect is just ahead, right? How about it? Do you two have the confidence to fight that old sword master?" Yi Yun's laughter came from the car. "Ancestor, we are naturally confident," Luo Li said with a smile, her eyes showing strong confidence. She is now at the 10th level of Yuan High Realm. The same is true for Lord Grimm. Because Yi Yun has been sealing Lord Grimm's cultivation, Lord Grimm did not continue to break through after reaching the 10th level of Yuan High Realm. Now the cultivation level of the two people is considered to be on par. But if the seal is lifted, Luo Li is at the 10th level of the God-shaping realm, and Lord Grimm has reached the realm of half-step divine bridge. This is the result of Yi Yun's special training for the two teenagers over the past month. The top 10 forces, starting from the blood-clothed sect, will challenge according to their ranking. The opponents you encounter are getting stronger and stronger. Luo Li and Jun Maxiao did not disappoint him. Both of them have reached the current state. Yi Yun looked in the direction of the Sword God Sect. His eyes flickered, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He saw the old sword master, who had been released from seclusion and became a strong man in the Shenqiao realm. Yi Yun nodded secretly. This old sword master still had some attainments in the way of swordsmanship. He is worthy of being the man who dominated a small place like the Guyu dynasty 100 years ago. Yi Yun withdrew his gaze. He tapped the carriage gently with his hand. The black carriage suddenly accelerated and arrived outside the mountain gate of the Sword God Sect in a blink of an eye. before the two disciples guarding the mountain gate could react, the carriage galloped in and arrived at the main hall square of the Sword God Sect. That the two Sword God Sect disciples couldn't help but turn pale with shock. They only saw a black light flashing past their eyes. One of the disciples looked back and suddenly found a black carriage parked in the square in the distance. Thinking of a certain rumor, the two of them suddenly turned pale. Chapter 36 Revenge. The sword points at the old sword master. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For nearly a month, the top 8 forces of the Guyu dynasty were all challenged by a pair of mysterious young men and women. The Bloody Clothes sect is the first to bear the brunt, because the powerful men of the blood-clothed sect's god realm took action forcefully. They were all killed, and the entire sect was almost wiped out. Later, these two young men and women challenged other major sects along the way. The result was no defeat. Those major sects obediently handed over all the sect resources in the treasure house. The teeth were broken and swallowed into the stomach. There was nothing they could do about this young man and woman, because this pair of young men and women are also two peerless strong men themselves, a great monk in the realm of shaping gods. But I don't know why, but the cultivation level was sealed, and it only showed the cultivation level of Yuan High Realm. Therefore, this matter seemed extremely strange and was widely circulated within the Guyu dynasty. As disciples of the Sword God Sect, they naturally heard about it. Unexpected, the Sword God Sect cannot escape the law of true fragrance. Today also ushered in the challenge from this mysterious young man and woman, the mountain gate. The two disciples looked at each other and exhaled softly, because they are at the 9th level of the Xiandan realm. No chance of this battle. So, the two of them just stared at the black carriage nervously. The handsome young man and woman suddenly took action. Luo Li and Lord Grimm jumped down from the carriage. Two people stood in the center of the square. Luo Li cupped his hands into fists and shouted, "Sword God Sect, please come out and fight." That within the main hall, Zhao Wuji and the old sword master, who were already prepared, looked at each other and walked out quickly. When the old sword master stepped out of the hall and saw Lord Grimm for the first time, an expression of incredible shock suddenly appeared on his face. He was no stranger to this young man. He quickly glanced at the beautiful little girl next to him, and his eyes suddenly turned gloomy. "Aren't these two guys remnants of the Shenlong Sect? Why did you suddenly have an opportunity and your cultivation skyrocketed?" That the old sword master was filled with doubts. He had just broken out of the barrier and had not received any news from Wanbao Pavilion yet. Therefore, one can imagine the shock in his heart after recognizing the identities of Luo Li and June Grimm. The two young disciples at the Qi Gathering Realm suddenly turned into monks at the 10th level of Yuan High Realm. If according to the secret report, these two people have also sealed their cultivation, and they are now considered to be great monks at the 10th level of the God-shaping realm. This is simply unimaginable. The old sword master's eyes moved rapidly, thinking about the various possibilities in his mind. The Shenlong Sect has long been a thing of the past. One generation is worse than the other. During the hundreds of years that the old sword master had been in power, he had dealt with several heads of the Shenlong Sect. He knew very well about this little-known sect. It couldn't be weaker. In the entire Guyu dynasty, even the 9th rank could not be ranked. But now, what adventure happened to the two young men and women in front of them? The old sword master looked at the two people with eyes like swords. He scanned them and found nothing unusual. These two remnants of the Shenlong Sect, apart from possessing extremely high levels of cultivation, the robes they wore and the swords they held were not of outstanding quality. Could it be that he inadvertently ingested some heavenly material and earthly treasure? Or did you accidentally obtain the inheritance of a certain ancient power? The old sword master secretly speculated, but no matter what, the old sword master remembered the instructions above and knew that he must not let these two teenagers go. Maybe that little girl, the so-called new generation leader of Shenlong Sect, should give her a way to survive, destroy half of her cultivation and let her live a good life. After all, that little girl is the sect master of the 298th generation. The Shenlong Sect has not been passed down for 300 generations. His mission is not only to torture the descendants of the Shenlong Sect, but also to let the Shenlong Sect be passed down to 300 generations and then be eliminated. Completely let Shenlong Sect disappear in the long river of history. This is the secret mission carried by the old sword master. In the early days, the old sword master also found this task unbelievable, but there was no way. His superiors once told him that this was what the superiors above meant, the old sword master was suddenly horrified. The big sect is above him. If it goes up 2 levels, wouldn't it be a heaven-level sect that secretly planned all this? The heaven-level sect is an extremely terrifying supreme force. Even a random disciple can destroy the entire Guyu dynasty. What kind of powerful person did the small Shenlong sect offend, so that it has been followed closely for dozens of generations? The old sword master didn't dare to think about it anymore. Fortunately, these 2 remnants of the Shenlong sect have now arrived at the sword god sect. Now that they are here, don't even think about going back. Senior sister, that must be the old sword master. Lord Grimm looked at an old man in white with an immortal air coming out, narrowed his eyelids, and asked in a deep voice. That's the old thing. Luo Li said through gritted teeth, this old guy hides behind the scenes and gives orders, torturing generations of members of the Shenlong sect until they are displaced and miserable. Today we must kill him and take revenge. Lord Grimm drew out his sharp sword, filled with murderous intent. Where are the disciples of the sword god sect? Zhao Wuji waved his hand, and hundreds of disciples of the sword god sect rushed out from all directions. You are so brave. Do you think our sword god sect is just paper? Zhao Wuji smiled coldly. The words fell. The surrounding Yuan High Realm disciples immediately started to act according to a certain formation. In an instant, the Big Dipper formation was completed. Luo Li looked around and smiled lightly. Zhao Wuji, you don't have to scream here, you weakling. This time, we are here to directly challenge the old sword master. You can go and rest. What? These 2 guys actually want to challenge the old sword master of the Shenqiao realm. That the Yuan High Realm disciples who had set up a large array around them all had shocked expressions on their faces. Zhao Wuji also looked stunned. Have these 2 guys become so arrogant as to be lawless? At this moment, Luo Li and Jun Maxiao's bodies trembled slightly, and there was a sound of the seal breaking inside their bodies. The 2 people's cultivation levels instantly returned to the realm of shaping gods. There was such a powerful aura on his body that even Zhao Wuji, who was at the 10th level of the god-shaping realm, couldn't help but feel his heart pounding at this moment. Old sword master, you are an old bastard who has been hiding behind the scenes and harming our Shenlong sect for nearly 100 years. Today we are here to take revenge on you. Luo Li raised the supreme golden dragon sword and pointed the tip of the sword at the old sword master. His eyes were red and he said very excitedly. The seal has been lifted. The old sword master narrowed his eyelids and the muscles on his face twitched slightly. This pair of young men really have some tricks up their sleeves. Any one of them is more powerful than his direct disciple Zhao Wuji. But the god-shaping realm is the god-shaping realm after all. Even if 10 people from the god-shaping realm were added together, they would not be able to compete with the Shenqiao realm. Furthermore, the old sword master has been immersed in the art of swordsmanship for nearly 300 years. His swordsmanship is earth-shattering. Even in the Kamikaze dynasty, there are only a few people at the same level who can defeat him. Chapter 37 Hard Fight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ha! You 2 remnants of the Shenlong sect could not have imagined that they would be so lucky, survive the disaster, and still improve by leaps and bounds. However, your good luck ends here today. The old sword master looked coldly and drew out the sword behind him. This is a king-level sword. The sword body is like snow, blooming with wisps of cold light. When the old sword master held the sword in his hand, the air around him suddenly became solemn. There seemed to be countless tiny sword energies slowly brewing in the air. The temperature dropped suddenly. The disciples of the sword god sect all around watched the old sword master draw his sword. With fanatical expressions on their faces, the old sword master, the spiritual monument of the sword god sect, he is the god in the hearts of all his disciples. Yi Yun sat in the carriage, watching everything happening in front of him quietly, with a calm expression. This old sword master is indeed unique in his attainments in the art of swordsmanship. It should be a tough battle for Lord Grimm and Luo Li. But that's fine too. It is also a kind of tempering. After all, both of them were stuck at the 10th level of the god-shaping realm. If they have an old sword master as a sparring partner and practice well, I believe it will be of great benefit to them to break through to the Shenqiao realm. After listening to the old sword master's words, Jun Maxiao's eyes were red, his body was trembling slightly. He spat out a mouthful of saliva and cursed with excitement. Old immortal, it's really all your fault. How dare you, a little remnant of the Shenlong Sect, scold me? That the old sword master was so angry after hearing what Lord Grimm said. A sword struck him. This sword energy was earth-shattering. It only flashed in the void before it arrived in front of Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm was suddenly startled. The speed of this old sword master's sword was really too fast. If he were not a strong man at the 10th level of the God-shaping realm, he might not even have a chance to use his sword. In a hurry, Lord Grimm struck out with his sword, and at the same time launched the 9 transformations of the divine dragon. The two swords collided. Lord Grimm was blown away by a huge force. Several phantoms formed in the air. And after removing all his power, Lord Grimm fell to the ground. His shoulders shook slightly, and blood soaked from the corners of his mouth. It was just the first time they fought, and Lord Grimm was slightly injured. "Junior brother, are you okay?" Seeing this situation, Luoli rushed over. Lord Grimm wiped the wisp of blood from the corner of his mouth and shook his head. "Senior sister, this old guy is very powerful, we have to be extra careful." Luoli nodded solemnly. Compared to Lord Grimm, her strength is 3 points weaker. If he really had to fight against this old sword master and take a real move, I'm afraid the injury would be more serious. However, the two strongest skills are not swordsmanship, but body skills. For many years, they have been on the run. The two people's 9 transformations of the dragon have reached an extremely high level. Coupled with the guidance of their ancestors along the way, it can be said that the attainments of Shenlong 9 transformations surpass Shenlong swordsmanship by a large margin. As expected of the master, the young man vomited blood as soon as he took action. Seeing Lord Grimm being injured, Zhao Wuji was secretly happy. The master, a swordsman, was invincible to the Guyu dynasty 100 years ago. He had no rivals at the same level and could even kill people beyond his level. The patriarch is invincible in the world. With just one strike of the sword, the boy was injured. Too strong, that the disciples of the sword god sect next to them all had fanatical looks in their eyes. This boy, the body is very strong. Different from the reaction of the sword god sect disciples, the old sword master was shocked in his heart. He used half of his strength with this sword, but I didn't expect it. The boy opposite had only a trace of blood seeping out of the corner of his mouth. This was completely different from what he had imagined. In the heart of the old sword master, even if this sword could not kill the young man, it would at least cause him to be seriously injured or fall to the ground, but it turned out to be a minor injury. The old sword master took 2 steps forward, waved his sword, and 2 consecutive awe-inspiring sword lights shot through the air. Luo Li and Lord Grimm had already been on guard. The moment the old sword master took action, he activated the 9 transformations of the divine dragon. The two people turned into a dozen phantoms of divine dragons, swimming in midair, barely escaping the killing blow of the old sword master. The movement skills of these two remnants are quite powerful. That the old sword master was also a knowledgeable person, so he couldn't help but nod secretly. He suddenly remembered that some of the people he had sent out were stronger than the few remnants of the Shenlong Sect, but it was difficult to catch them. This is due to the unique movement technique of Shenlong Sect. The old sword master thought of this, smiled gloomily, and suddenly drew a shadow. His sword moves were like the Yangtze River, rushing towards the two people. In mid-air, the three began to fight. Although the old sword master is very good at movement, he is still slightly inferior to the 9 transformations of the divine dragon of the Shenlong Sect. He activated his body skills just to catch up with the rhythm of the two people. The real killing move was the sword in his hand. Streams of sword light flew from all directions. Luo Li and Jun Maxiao dodged and fought back. Every time the sword light collided, the two people felt an electric shock like being struck by lightning. It only took a dozen moves. Luo Li and Jun Maxiao suffered varying degrees of trauma, and several large mouthfuls of blood spurted out from their mouths, especially Luo Li, who had already been hit by a sword. A long and narrow wound was opened on her left shoulder. Yi Yin observed the battle, and there was no trace of emotion on Gujing Wubua's face. Then, he gently touched the void with his hand. The aura of the robes on the two people suddenly surged, and they suddenly reached the imperial level. At the same time, the two swords also reached the imperial level. The aura of the imperial treasure filled the air, and the old sword master who was attacking couldn't help but be stunned. With a fiery gaze in his eyes, these two little guys are really blessed. The robe on his body and the sword in his hand were actually of the royal level. But their aura was concealed. The old sword master didn't care much about the robes. The key was the two swords in the hands of Luo Li and Jun Ma Xiao. The powerful imperial aura released from these two swords made it difficult for the old sword master to control himself. He has been immersed in swordsmanship for many years, and the swords he owns are only king-level ones. Over the years, he has longed to own an imperial sword. Unexpectedly, he had been dealing with the remnants of the Shenlong Sect for hundreds of years, and today he was given two emperor-level divine swords. This made the old sword master extremely happy. He must seize these two imperial swords. Ancestor, you have unsealed it for us again. Luo Li and Jun Ma Xiao were happy at the same time. With the emperor-level robes on their bodies and the emperor-level sword in their hands, it can be said that the combat power of the two people has been improved again. The old sword master's heart was burning and he wanted to snatch the sword quickly. So he took the lead in launching the attack. Sword lights roared in one after another, all directions were shrouded in sword light. Lord Grimm and Luo Li suddenly encountered a huge crisis, and were struck by dozens of swords. Even if he is protected by an imperial robe, he was also shaken by the huge power of the sword, causing blood to boil all over his body, and he vomited blood repeatedly. Chapter 38 You Can't Beat Me, There Are Still Ancestors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The old sword master was eager to seize the treasure, and for a moment, the sword light fell like rain like crazy. In the center of the entire square, sword energy has formed a vast ocean. Luo Li and Jun Ma Xiao were like two small boats, constantly swaying in the storm. Fortunately, what they both do best is escape. Under the crazy attacks of the old sword master, he was able to escape from danger every time. Despite this, the two people were still tricked. Even if the two of them were wearing imperial robes, it would be difficult to block the powerful sword light. Sometimes, the king-level sword of the old sword master stabbed the two of them. The sword contained the fatal blow of a strong man in the Shenqiao realm, tearing a hole in the royal-level robes of the two. The old sword master became more and more courageous as he fought, like a god descending to earth, unstoppable. Lord Grimm and Luo Li are like people running for their lives. He used the Shenlong 9 transformation technique to its extreme, and escaped from danger every time by luck. The old sword master brought unimaginable pressure to the two of them. Every moment you are in a life-and-death crisis. It can be said that you can easily fall if you are not careful. Seeing the old sword master showing off his infinite power, all the disciples of the sword god sect had a look of fanaticism in their eyes. This is the first swordsman of the Guyu dynasty and the great monk of the Shenqiao realm, really powerful. The horror is so unimaginable. Zhao Wuji had his hands behind his back with a faint smile on his face. The master went on a killing spree and the two little guys were so exhausted that they might not be able to hold on for long. Within the carriage, Yi Yun still looked calm and watched the battle calmly. He was not surprised by the strength of this old sword master. The person who was able to become invincible to the entire Guyu dynasty 100 years ago did have something special about him. Although Lord Grimm and Luo Li have been practicing since childhood, their foundation is not solid. He spent most of his time running for his life. Even after a month of bloody battle, the two people only improved their cultivation level quickly. They have never faced a truly strong person. The so-called strong ones are people like the old sword master, ability to be invincible at the same level and kill people at higher levels. If the two of them could persist under the old sword master for a longer time, it would be of great help to their future practice. Although Lord Grimm has reached the half-step divine bridge realm, but it is not that easy to break through the Shenqiao realm. This battle may be an opportunity. Yi Yun is very patient, even though Jun Ma Xiao and Luo Li were hit by several swords at this moment, and their bodies were dripping with blood. He still had no intention of intervening. What's the point of being injured? I think back then, when he, the #1 bully in Sangnan continent, was always causing trouble to others, he also encountered extremely powerful opponents and besieged him. Injuries are inevitable, but injuries can also make people grow quickly. Therefore, Yi Yun was hard-hearted and had great expectations for these two disciples in the sect. The future Shenlong Sect will have to rely on Luo Li and Lord Grimm to support it, and he wanted to see the outside world. I want to compete with stronger people. For more than a month, Yi Yun's practice has not fallen behind. The stamina of the blood of the ancestral dragon continues. Currently, Yi Yun's cultivation has reached the 7th level of True God Realm. The True God Realm is already very powerful, but Yi Yun's cultivation level is still rising like a rocket. The next stage of the Divine Lord Realm is only a few months away. How come these two guys are so strong? They were hit by more than a dozen swords, and they still managed to hold on without falling. On the square, the old sword master launched wave after wave of ferocious attacks. The two remnants of the Shenlong Sect who were killed now looked like two bloody men, but the old sword master was also a little annoyed. It takes a stick of incense. He hadn't even beaten them down completely, especially. Even though he used his killing moves one after another, he still failed to kill the young man. Named Lord Grim, for this young man, the old sword master had murderous intentions. In the Shenlong Sect, it is enough to leave the little girl alone. Today, leave half of that little girl's life, let her roll down the mountain, continue to develop the descendants of the Shenlong Sect, and let them survive for another few decades, wait for the new wave of disciples to rise. He then killed Luoli, the 298th generation leader of the Shenlong Sect. There is less than 100 years left before he completely completes his mission. The higher-ups had promised that as long as he completed this task, he would be rewarded with an imperial-level swordsmanship. At the same time, cultivation resources are provided all the way to the Destiny realm. These conditions are too tempting, and it is very easy for the old sword master to achieve them. However, because his superiors required him to keep everything concealed, he did not hesitate to go to great lengths to relay this task through the Supreme Elder of the Izumo Sword Sect. Swish, 2 more swords were swung out, and Lord Grim was hit twice more on the shoulder. Lord Grim stumbled and almost fell down. Luoli hurried over to support. Seeing this, the old sword master struck with his sword again, sending Luoli flying away. With this sword, he showed mercy. This little girl must not die, otherwise his mission will be considered a failure. Lord Grim took the opportunity to spread out his body skills and fled to other directions. After fighting for a long time, the old sword master suddenly became angry. He suddenly changed his sword technique. This set of swordsmanship is more powerful than the previous set of swordsmanship. In an instant, Lord Grim was forced out of the shadow in midair. He was hit by several swords again and accidentally fell from midair. Junior brother, Luoli was so anxious that she shouted and rushed over to rescue him. The old sword master struck Luoli's body with another sword light. Luoli was shot away again. This is the master's new swordsmanship, right? Zhao Wuji, who had been watching the battle, saw this set of swordsmanship and couldn't help but salivate in his eyes. After this battle is over, he must find a way to learn this sword technique from his master. Lord Grim fell to the ground, his body dripping with blood after being hit by more than a dozen swords. He suddenly turned over and was about to stand up and fight again. Suddenly, his shoulder was lightly touched, and a gentle voice came from his ear. "You have done a great job today." Hearing this voice, Lord Grim turned around and found that his ancestor was standing beside him. At some point, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. "Ancestor, I'm embarrassing you. I can't beat this old guy," Lord Grim said with a sad face. "It's no shame if you can't beat him. Aren't you still with me?" Yi Yun smiled faintly. He took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Lord Grim. The other side, Luoli got up from the ground again, and her eyes suddenly brightened when she saw her ancestor, who was dressed in white and looked like an immortal. "My ancestor is actually taking action himself." She was pleasantly surprised. Opposite, when the old sword master saw the young man in white who suddenly appeared next to Lord Grim, his pupils shrank sharply and he looked up and down. This handsome young man was as handsome as an immortal, but he couldn't see his cultivation level. This startled him. Is this a peerless strong man? "Come over." Yi Yun tapped the old sword master lightly with his hand. The old sword master suddenly looked shocked and found that his whole body was out of control and he floated towards the opponent with his legs raised. What kind of cultivation is this? The old sword master was so frightened at this moment that he lost his consciousness. Chapter 39 Hell Opens, Suppressed Forever. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The old sword master has lived for hundreds of years and has never encountered such a terrifying moment. The young man in white clothes who looked like an immortal clicked him with his hand, and he lost control of his body and flew up like a paper man. The disciples of the sword god sect all around were shocked and stared at the old sword master who was out of control. They didn't recover for a long time. Next to him, Zhao Wuji was breathing rapidly. There are countless thoughts flashing crazily in my heart. Who is this immortal-like young man in white clothes? Why can you subdue the master with just one move? The old sword master's uncontrollable body finally stopped a foot away in front of Yi Yun. Who are you? that the old sword master was trembling all over, sweating profusely, and feeling frightened in his heart. I am the ancestor of the Shenlong Sect. Yi Yun shrugged slightly and smiled lightly, although he did not release any breath. At this moment, everyone present felt the pressure and could not breathe. It felt like a huge mountain was weighing heavily on my heart. After hearing what Yi Yun said, the old sword master was in disbelief. He shook his head repeatedly and shouted angrily, "Impossible! How could you be the ancestor of the Shenlong Sect?" "What's impossible?" Luoli quickly walked over, stood in front of the old sword master, and said with a sneer, "This is the 13th generation ancestor of our Shenlong Sect." 13th generation? The old sword master was instantly confused. He knew that the Shenlong Sect had been passed down to Luo Li's generation, which was already the 298th generation. If we push it back to the 13th generation, how long will we live? At least tens of thousands of years. Even, can reach more than 100,000 years. The old sword master himself only lived a few hundred years. How can one deduce the time of the 13th generation master of the Shenlong Sect? He didn't know much about the Shenlong Sect, so he could only see the leopard through a tube. After all, the history of the entire Changnan continent has gone through countless generations in these 100,000 years. With the information the old sword master had, he could only understand the development of the Shenlong Sect in the past 10,000 years at best. In the past 10,000 years, the Shenlong Sect has been an ordinary sect in decline. Who asked you to harm our Shenlong Sect? Luoli suppressed the hatred in her heart, tightly clutched the sword in her hand, and stared at the old sword master and asked. I can't say it. Even if you kill me, you can't say it. The old sword master suddenly shook his head and smiled miserably. Can he say it? This matter has already involved the heaven-level sect. The stakes are high. Even if a tiny bit is leaked, not only the sword god sect will be completely destroyed, but even the entire Guyu dynasty will not be spared. Then you don't have to say anything. Yi Yun raised his eyebrows and said nonchalantly from the side. Then he gently tapped his hand, and the old sword master immediately lowered his head, as if he was asleep. Yi Yun began to search his memory. After a few seconds, he took back his hand, his face thoughtful. Ancestor, who did it? Lord Grimm, standing next to Yi Yun, asked nervously. The Kamikaze dynasty, the Shenlong Sect. Yi Yun said softly. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and a smile appeared on his face. He did not tell Lord Grimm the truth. In the memory of the old sword master, the mysterious man from the Shenlong Sect once accidentally revealed that the one who dealt with the Shenlong Sect was the one above, 2 in a row. If you push it back 2 levels, it would be a heaven-level sect. Under eternity is the level of heaven. The heaven-level sect is already the top power in Changnan continent. It can be said that if the eternal level sects had not been born, this world would have been the world of the heaven-level sections. A huge heaven-level sect must deliberately deal with the small ordinary-level Shenlong Sect and persecute it for 10,000 years. How much cause and effect and hatred does this involve? It seems, the 250th generation leader of the Shenlong Sect offended a heaven-level sect. Thinking of this, Yi Yun had an idea in his mind. It's just a heaven-level sect, so what? In his eyes, he was still as insignificant as an ant. It turns out to be the Kamikaze dynasty. Lord Grimm murmured to himself, but his face was a little confused. He didn't know anything about the Shenlong Sect of the Kamikaze dynasty. After all, Lord Grimm has never even left the Guyu dynasty. Don't worry, no one can escape. Yi Yun patted the dazed Lord Grimm and said with a smile. Luo Li came over at this time. Ancestor, have you discovered the whereabouts of our senior sister Su Wani through the memory of the old sword master? Yi Yun searched the old sword master's memory, shook his head, and said softly, Su Wani is missing. Missing? Is the senior sister not dead? A glimmer of hope appeared on Luo Li's beautiful little face. At that time, the senior sister, in order to protect her and her junior brother, took the initiative to lure away the pursuers. Since then, I don't know whether I will live or die. But senior sister's cultivation was only at the 9th level of Qi-gathering realm at that time, not much higher than Luo Li. He is still the lowest level Qi-gathering realm young monk, so Luo Li has been worried that the senior sister, who has no news, has been killed by the masterminds behind the scenes. Yi Yun pondered. According to the memory of the old sword master, Su Wani was being chased all the way. In a panic, she broke into a valley covered in white mist. Everyone chased him in to look for him, but did not find his whereabouts. Thinking of this, Yi Yun said, "After all the work here, go find Su Wani." "That's great, thank you, ancestor." Luo Li and Jun Grim looked at each other, their faces filled with smiles that could not be concealed. "Master, I want to avenge you." Zhao Wuji raised the sword in his hand with a tragic look on his face and shouted loudly, "All disciples of the Sword God Sect, listen to the order. The old sword master has been killed by a traitor, let's rush forward and kill him." As the new sect leader of the Sword God Sect, Zhao Wuji has extremely high prestige, his voice immediately resonated with many Sword God Sect disciples. In an instant, everyone drew their swords and rushed toward the center of the square. Yi Yun raised his head coldly and narrowed his eyes. As he glanced around, it was as if a powerful shock wave was spreading. Suddenly, everyone froze on the scene as if a restraining spell had been cast, and the swords in their hands fell to the ground with a clanking sound. Even Zhao Wuji, who has the highest level of cultivation, at this moment, he was also cold and unable to move, and the sword in his hand fell to the ground. When the old sword master came back to his senses, his eyes were tearing up when he saw this, and red blood oozed from his eye sockets. "Senior, can you forgive me, a disciple of the Sword God Sect? I am willing to pay with my life." The old sword master bent his knees and suddenly knelt on the ground. It's really funny. When you were killing several generations of disciples of my Shenlong Sect, did you ever think about today? Yi Yun smiled lightly, his voice spread to the surroundings, and the air temperature dropped. Then he pointed towards the ground with his hand. "Open." The sound of rumbling came over, and the earth shook. The entire Sword God Sect building collapsed. The ground suddenly collapsed, an extremely huge pitch-black hole appeared and suddenly began to swallow everything. All the disciples of the Sword God Sect, including the old sword master, fell into the black hole at this moment. Yi Yun and others, as well as the black carriage, were still hovering in the void at the entrance of the black hole, unaffected in any way. The Sword God Sect has tortured our Shenlong Sect for hundreds of years. From today on, we will be suppressed in hell forever, suffering the torture of hell, and not allowed to be reincarnated. Yi Yun's cold voice echoed between heaven and earth. In the dark cave entrance, there were gusts of wind and a ghostly atmosphere, and various infiltrating sounds like ghosts crying and wolf howling came out. Chapter 40 White Mist Valley, Mysterious Existence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Luo Li and Jun Maxiao stepped into the void and looked at the huge black hole below, where gusts of sinister wind were constantly pouring out, mixed with various terrifying screams. The two of them couldn't help but tremble all over, and their faces turned pale. Thinking back to what their ancestor had just said, the two of them felt even more terrified. Is this hell? The ancestor was too cruel. He actually connected to hell and sent everyone in the Sword God Sect directly there. Although Luo Li was scared, she was also excited. This old swordsman of the Sword God Sect has harmed the Shenlong Sect for hundreds of years and killed several generations of Shenlong Sect disciples and sect leaders. He is the bloody enemy of the Shenlong Sect. Even killing 10,000 times is not an exaggeration. The ancestors did not kill them directly, but suppressed them in hell forever and endured various tortures. It was really a relief. Lord Grimm looked at the majestic figure and asked in a trembling voice, "Ancestor, is this really hell down here?" Yi Yun smiled lightly and did not answer the question. Instead, the black horse next to it became excited. Perhaps seeing the scene in hell inspired its ferocity. It actually said to itself, "The master used his supreme power to build an 18-level hell deep underground. Although it is not the real 9 nether hell, it is no different from hell. I see." Lord Grimm touched his chest, feeling so excited that he couldn't control himself. The true God state of our ancestors was so terrifying. He was actually able to create 18 levels of hell with his supreme divine power. He looked at the majestic figure, with a huge look of fanaticism in his eyes. "Seal up." Yi Yun whispered a word. Suddenly, countless amounts of soil gathered from all directions and entered the large black hole. It was filled in instantly. The original Sword God Sect was located on a towering mountain. At this moment, both Dashan and Sword God Sect disappeared. The place became flat. Looking at this miraculous power of creation, Luo Li and Jun Maxiao couldn't help but yearn for it and lamented the power of their ancestors. Let's go find Su Wani." Yi Yun took one step forward, disappeared into the void, and entered the carriage. Luo Li and Jun Grim quickly followed and sat at the front of the car. After the three people sat down, the black horse flew up with 4 hooves, turned into a black light, and suddenly disappeared into the sky. Yi Yun obtained the memory of the old sword master and naturally knew the approximate location where Su Wani disappeared. Therefore, he sent a divine thought to Dark Horse. The Dark Horse is galloping all the way. After just a cup of tea, it suddenly stopped, turned back and grinned. Master, this should be it. Yi Yun smiled softly, lifted the car curtain, turned his eyes to Luo Li and asked, does this place look familiar to you? Luo Li looked at the trend of the mountains around her and suddenly shouted, Junior brother, look at this. Is this the place where we got separated from our senior sister? Lord Grim looked around hurriedly. After a few seconds, he confirmed this place in his mind, and then nodded quickly. Senior sister, this should be right here. I remember that senior sister led the pursuers towards the southeast. As he spoke, Lord Grim pointed in a certain direction. Yes, I remember that too. Luo Li slapped his thigh suddenly and said with bright eyes. Yi Yun nodded and said softly, there is a valley more than 500 miles southeast, which is shrouded in fog all year round. It is said that many people will get lost if they go in, and it is difficult to get out. Some of those who chased the past also disappeared, and later escaped by luck. People who are like this no longer pursue Su Wani. Ancestor, is there any powerful power in that place? Luo Li asked solemnly. Yi Yun glanced at Luo Li lightly and said nothing. Instead, he whispered to the black horse, Pony, let's go to the valley over there and have a look. The black horse's hooves flew and suddenly turned into a black light. In an instant, we arrived above a valley. The clouds and mist were steaming, and the fog was so thick that I couldn't see the road clearly. Under Yi Yun's instruction, the carriage slowly landed in the valley. Let's go and take a look at the front. Yi Yun drove the carriage forward nonchalantly, with a hint of ridicule in the depths of his eyes. Just now, Yi Yun came to this valley with his powerful spiritual consciousness and found no trace of Su Wani, but he discovered that there was an incredible guy here. That guy is sleeping. In order to exercise the courage of Luo Li and Jun Maxiao, and also give them some experience, Yi Yun did not remind them. He just instructed the dark horse step by step and entered the valley surrounded by mist. The fog was thick and visibility in the valley was extremely low. It's strange, what kind of place is this? My consciousness can't break through the 5-meter range. Lord Grim sat on the carriage, holding the reins in his hand, constantly scanning the surroundings with a look of surprise on his face. Luo Li's face was a little solemn. She smoothed the long black hair on her forehead and said softly, this place is a bit evil. It is said that many people went in and never came out, but some people were able to escape and ascend to heaven by luck. I wonder, can senior sister be so good? Luck. Lord Grim sighed, looking sad. It has been more than 3 months, the senior sister is still like a stone in the sea. There is no news, I'm afraid. I also fell into this foggy valley. The black carriage moved slowly through the fog. After entering the valley, various strange sounds came from all around. Some were like children crying, some were like wild beasts roaring, and all kinds of complex sounds sounded from all directions. This place is really evil. Luo Li drew her sword, her beautiful little face showing a look of vigilance. This mysterious valley has no name, because it is located at the junction of the Guyu dynasty and the Kamikaze dynasty. The surrounding area is sparsely populated, and few monks pass by here. At that time, the 3 sisters and brothers were escorting the master's ashes, and they happened to pass by this valley 500 miles away. Luo Li guessed in her mind, perhaps, the senior sister was injured at the beginning, so she rushed into this strange white mist valley without hesitation. If she was lucky, she might be able to escape. If he didn't enter the white mist valley, he might be chased and killed by the pursuers. Thinking of what happened to her senior sister, Luo Li felt sad, and crystal tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. Senior sister, please don't be sad. I believe that senior sister has deep blessings and will not get into trouble so easily. Lord Grim comforted him. Ready to fight? Yi Yun's voice suddenly sounded without warning. Lord Grim and Luo Li were shocked. The two of them discovered that one after another, black figures as big as bamboo hats flew out of the white mist. The two men immediately drew their swords and slashed out dozens of sword lights, followed by screams. Those black shadows were injured one by one and immediately shrank into the mist again. "Oh my God, there are such big lice!" After Luo Li saw the black shadow clearly, she couldn't help being shocked.